Hi, I'm John from Makers Empire. We're an Adelaide company who make 3D design software, CAD software for kids, and we've been around for about 3 years, and I thought I'd just share a little bit of the journey that we've been on over this time. 3 years ago, an old friend of mine came to me with some software that he'd written, and it was actually software to design skateboards. And we weren't 3D at this point, we were 2D, and it was just putting together basic shapes to design the deck of a skateboard. And he wanted to make it into a product, and I thought maybe it's got some, it's got some legs. I didn't know. So we took our early prototype and went and visited skate parks and tried to get, well, a few things. Number one, like would skaters want to use this? Number two, could you make cool stuff with this? And number three, would they buy their skateboards after designing them? And it turns out that it's like no, and no. So that wasn't the most successful thing. And also it was kind of awkward going to skate parks and trying to talk to skaters about our app. So it wasn't the most fun, but we regrouped, and Rowan, my co-founder, said, well, it's actually built in a 3D engine, and so we could make this into a 3D program. So that's what he did. He made it into a program that could put 3D objects together. And he'd heard about 3D printing, and so we kind of investigated the idea of 3D printers, and we didn't know much about it at the time. It was 3 years ago, basically not much idea, but it sounded cool, right? It sounded like awesome, and the more we read about it, the more like impressed and excited we were. And my wife, a teacher, said, well, you should try that at the school. So we went and called our old primary schools and got our 3D printer off, the cheapest one we could find off Gumtree, and took the 3D printer and our software into these schools and to see what would happen. So we spent 6 to 12 months in different schools showing them our program and the 3D printer, and we found that they were really engaged and really excited with the idea of 3D printing, and that there was all these ideas that they had on what they could do with the 3D printers. But over that time, we came to realize as well that just having a 3D printer and putting it in a classroom, even with our software, wouldn't really be enough. And so we came around to the idea that we needed a few more pieces to the puzzle, and we came up with the idea of a learning program. So the learning program has things like professional development for the teachers and curriculum to show how 3D printing can actually be used in the classroom. And so for the first year or so, that's kind of what we were building. And today, our software looks much different. Our software is much more advanced and has a lot more features. You can see from this that it's not typical, 3D CAD software. Most 3D CAD software is pretty difficult to use and really emphasizes the idea of precision and making something useful, whereas ours is much more creative and artistic. We've also built into it things like a social network, so different students can comment on each other's designs, and the teachers can provide feedback to their students. And they also have leaderboards where they can do competitions, and the students can kind of get engaged and really like have things to do within the software itself. So one thing that we had to kind of answer along this journey is why 3D printing in classrooms? Some teachers just don't worry about it. We should be teaching English and maths and numeracy, literacy and numeracy. This 3D stuff is just a fad, it's an app, why would you teach it? We kind of got a little bit lucky on the way with the push towards STEM that a lot of schools are now on the path to. And one of the early things we came across was the idea that 3D printing is like computing. In the early days of computing, you had mainframe machines and mini computers, and it took about 30 years for computers to actually cross over and become useful in a school or as a consumer device. And we think 3D printers are undergoing a similar transition. So when you see a picture like this of a kid who's using a PC in the 80s, the skills and tools he learned then, whether it was about operating systems or Excel spreadsheets, those skills are still useful today. So if we can give kids today an experience about 3D printing, it's likely that into the future it'll be important and hopefully valuable to them. So that's one reason. The other is the push towards different types of curriculum. So 25, 30 years ago, if you knew a lot of stuff about a certain subject, that would give you, put you in good stead to have a job or career in that field. But today with Google and with your mobile phone, information is basically so cheap or free that, what we should be teaching the students has changed. Rather than just how to remember and access information, it's about how to synthesize that information into something useful. And around that have come up the ideas of things like design thinking, being able to develop new ideas and new concepts, and also 21st century skills which emphasize things like problem solving, collaboration, and creativity as being more or just as important as rote learning a whole bunch of facts. The other thing I came across recently was this longitudinal 45-year study on genius, which came out of the University of America, and the director of that study actually put up that quote saying that spatial ability is one of the largest known untapped sources of human potential. And I think one reason why it's kind of been ignored so far is that it's very difficult to measure. But the further we get with technology, the more important I believe it becomes. If you talk to a scientist or a computer scientist, an architect, or a doctor, a lot of the things that they do in their work will be in 3D in their head, like how they imagine a human body is put together, or a computer program, or how shadows on a building, look. They're all part of jobs nowadays and jobs into the future. So that's basically our story of the last 3 years. Our focus is purely on the primary and middle school. So we're working with a lot of schools, almost 200 schools now, and at the current rate, over 1,000 designs a day are being made by students in our software, and that's about it. Thank you.